For a second, everything in the room narrowed to just that look. Not recognition, not warmth, just confusion and irritation, like I was a stranger standing too close. "Stay with me, sir," the anesthesiologist said quickly, adjusting the mask. "You're going under." Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Victor's gaze didn't leave mine. I didn't speak. I couldn't. The last time he looked at me like that, there had been a room full of people watching. Crystal glasses, polished silver. His voice cutting through the laughter. "She's too stupid to learn anything." A few people chuckled back then, uncertain, polite, waiting for the punchline. There wasn't one. I remember the way he set his glass down. Slow, deliberate, like he'd planned it. "I've spent years trying to fix her," he said, shaking his head. "Tutors, schools, evaluations. Nothing works." My hands had been shaking under the table. Not from embarrassment, something else. Something I didn't have words for yet. Because I had tried. I studied until my vision blurred. I memorized everything I could get my hands on. And still, every result came back the same. Not good enough. Not even close. Back in the operating room, the monitor let out a sharp, uneven beep. "Doctor," the nurse pressed, urgency rising. "We need to start now." My eyes dropped to the chart again. His history, his name, the signature at the bottom of the consent form barely legible. Rushed. Victor Voss. The man who told me I didn't belong to him anymore. The man who made sure no one else believed in me either. I reached for the scalpel. And just before I made the first incision, his fingers twitched against the table like he was trying to say something. I didn't stop. "Incision," I said, my voice steady enough to surprise even me. The nurse placed the scalpel into my hand like it was routine, like the man on the table wasn't the same one who erased me from his life with a single sentence. The moment the blade touched skin, everything else disappeared. Not the past, but the noise of it. The operating room narrowed into precision, angles, timing, blood pressure, oxygen levels, millimeters that decided everything. "Vitals dropping," someone called. "I see it," I replied, already adjusting. Suction. My hands moved without hesitation. Years of training, repetition, discipline, none of it questioned itself now. Not here, not when it mattered. But his face, even under the surgical lights, I couldn't unsee it. And without warning, I was back there again. I didn't go home after that dinner. There wasn't anything left for me there anyway. I walked until the streetlights thinned out and the quiet got heavy. My phone buzzed twice, unknown numbers. I didn't answer. By morning, I was sitting on a plastic chair, inside a 2-4-hour clinic, staring at a help wanted sign taped crookedly to the front desk. "You here for the job?" a tired-looking nurse asked, not even glancing up from her clipboard. I nodded. "Cleaning. Night shifts. Minimum pay. I'll take it." She finally looked at me then, just for a second like she expected hesitation. When it didn't come, she shrugged. "Start tonight." That's how it began. Not with some breakthrough. Not with someone believing in me. Just a mop, a quiet hallway, and a place where no one knew my name. At first, I kept my head down, cleaned rooms, emptied bins, avoided eye contact. But it didn't take long before I started noticing things. The way doctors spoke in shorthand, the rhythm of patient charts, the patterns in symptoms and responses. I started reading whatever got left behind, old pamphlets, outdated textbooks, scribbled notes. At night, when no one was around, I'd sit in the supply closet under flickering light and test myself. Memorize, repeat, understand. And something didn't make sense, because I could follow it easily. "Hey," the same nurse from my first day said one night, catching me mid-page. "You planning to take my job or something?" I froze, closing the book too quickly. She waved it off, stepping closer. "Relax. You actually understood that?" I hesitated, then nodded. She studied me for a moment longer than expected. "Then why are you cleaning floors?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know how to explain that every time I tried before. I failed. Or at least that's what I'd been told. A week later, I requested my academic records. It should have been simple. It wasn't. Some of these files are incomplete, the admin said over the phone. Missing test scores. Evaluation reports without timestamps. That's not possible, I said, gripping the edge of the desk. There was a pause, papers shuffling. And this recommendation letter, she continued slowly, it's unusually harsh. Who signed it? Another pause. Victor Voss. My chest tightened. I never saw that letter. It was submitted directly to multiple institutions, she said. It may have influenced your rejections. Influenced. That word stuck. Because suddenly, the failures didn't feel like mine anymore. Across the city, Victor Voss stood in front of a crowd, perfectly composed, speaking about discipline, about excellence, about the cost of weakness. My legacy, he said smoothly, will not be compromised. No mention of me. No hesitation. Like I had never existed. Back in the clinic, I stared at the placement test results in my hands. Top percentile. Across every section. Miss Voss, the examiner said carefully, adjusting his glasses, these scores are exceptional. I didn't feel exceptional. I felt angry, confused. Like something had been taken from me and I was only just starting to see the outline of it. The examiner leaned forward slightly. I have to ask, where have you been all this time? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Again. I stared at the screen for a second too long, then answered. Hello? Silence. Then a voice I hadn't heard in years. Cold. Controlled. You need to stop whatever you think you're doing. I went still. Victor, I've already corrected your path once, he continued. Don't make me do it again. The line went dead. I slowly lowered the phone. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't over. Not even close. He didn't just know. He was watching. I stared at my phone long after the call ended, the silence pressing in like it meant something. Like it confirmed something I hadn't been ready to say out loud yet. I've already corrected your path once. Corrected. Not helped. Not guided. Corrected. Miss Voss? The examiner prompted gently, pulling me back. Is everything all right? I looked down at the test results again. Perfect scores. Numbers that didn't match the version of me my father had spent years presenting to the world. No, I said quietly. Then, more firmly, but it will be. I enrolled the next week. No announcement. No celebration. Just paperwork, orientation, and a schedule that left no room to think about anything except moving forward. Classes moved fast, but not fast enough to overwhelm me. If anything, it felt like catching up to something I'd already started years ago. Concepts clicked. Patterns made sense. Information stayed. And for the first time in my life, no one was telling me I was falling behind. Dr. Voss, one of my instructors said months later, almost casually, as he handed back an exam. I paused. He didn't correct himself. Neither did I. But the silence didn't last. Halfway through my first year in the accelerated pre-med track, I was called into an administrative office. 3 people sat across from me, files open, expressions neutral but not relaxed. Miss Voss, one of them began, folding his hands. We've received a formal concern regarding your academic history. My stomach tightened. From who? They exchanged a glance. It questions the validity of your current placement based on prior performance records. Of course it did. I didn't need them to say his name. He's wrong, I said, sharper than I intended. Those records aren't accurate. Can you prove that? Another asked. I opened my mouth, then stopped. Because that was the problem. I didn't have proof. Not yet. The review took weeks. Weeks of waiting. Of quiet looks in hallways. Of professors who suddenly became more careful around me. But I didn't slow down. If anything, I worked harder. Longer hours. More cases. More exams. No mistakes. Because I knew what he was trying to do. Again. One evening, a faculty advisor stopped me outside the lab. Walk with me, she said, not waiting for an answer. We moved down the corridor in silence before she finally spoke. I've been reviewing your file, she said. and your past records don't match your current performance. I let out a dry breath. That's one way to put it. She stopped walking, turning to face me fully. No, she said quietly. It's not inconsistency, it's interference. I felt something in my chest shift. What do you mean? She glanced around, lowering her voice. There are timestamp discrepancies, missing documentation, evaluations submitted through unofficial channels. My pulse picked up. You're saying someone altered them? I'm saying, she replied carefully, it didn't happen by accident. For the first time, it wasn't just a suspicion in my head. It was real, documented, but still incomplete. Can you prove it? I asked. She held my gaze for a moment. Not yet. The board cleared me conditionally. I could stay, but my record would remain under review. A quiet stain. Exactly the kind he knew would follow me. Still, it wasn't enough to stop me. Nothing was. Years passed like that, step by step, no shortcuts. Medical school, residency. Every stage harder than the last, but cleaner, untouched. Because now I was watching for it, and nothing slipped through. Dr. Voss, a senior surgeon, called one morning, tossing a file onto the table during briefing. You're led on the next rotation. I caught it, scanning quickly. Neurosurgery. High risk, high pressure. Exactly where mistakes weren't tolerated. Understood, I said. He gave a small nod. Good, because we just got word emergency transfer inbound. VIP case. Massive cerebral hemorrhage. The room shifted instantly. ETA? Someone asked. 10 minutes. Name? Another pressed. The surgeon shook his head. Restricted for now. You'll see it when the file clears. I felt something tighten in my chest again. Not fear. Something sharper. Because, for reasons I couldn't explain yet, it felt like everything was about to come full circle. The name hit before I could prepare for it. Victor Voss. For a split second, the room felt smaller, the lights harsher, the sound of the monitors louder than they should have been. Doctor? The nurse pressed. We're ready. I didn't answer right away. I was staring at the chart at the details beneath his name. Age, blood type, medical history. Every line confirmed it. There was no mistake. Dr. Voss, the anesthesiologist said, more firmly this time. We're losing time. I exhaled slowly. Proceed, I said. The surgery moved fast. Scalpel, suction, clamp. Every motion precise, controlled. Years of training carried me forward, even as something heavier pressed just beneath the surface. Pressure's unstable, someone called. I see it, I replied, adjusting without hesitation. Increase suction. I need a clearer field. Blood pooled, then cleared. The source of the hemorrhage came into view. I leaned in slightly, focused, detached. That was the only way this worked. But detachment isn't the same as absence, because even as I worked, fragments kept breaking through. His voice. That night, the way people had looked at me like I was something to tolerate, not understand. She's too stupid to learn anything. The words didn't sting the same way anymore. Now they just didn't fit. Doctor, look at this, the assisting resident said suddenly. I glanced over briefly. A secondary scan had been pulled up on the adjacent monitor, his prior records, now fully unlocked under emergency clearance. Legal attachments. Background files. I almost ignored it. Almost. Then I saw the dates. My dates. Academic years. Evaluation periods. My hand paused for half a second. Continue suction, I said immediately, refocusing. Don't stop. But I couldn't unsee it. Embedded within his medical history were linked documents flagged due to shared legal identifiers, guardianship records, authorization forms, and attached to them, evaluations. Mine. Vitals dropping again, the anesthesiologist warned. I'm closing the bleed, I said. Stay with me. But my mind was moving faster now. Connecting. The missing scores. The altered reports. The letter I never saw. All of it tied back to him. Not just influence. Control. Documented. Doctor, the nurse said urgently, His brain activity is fluctuating. I know, I snapped, sharper than before. Then steadier. Almost there. I adjusted the final clamp, stabilized the vessel, watched the monitor shift numbers climbing back into range. A long, tense second passed. Then another. He's stabilizing, someone said. The room didn't relax, but it shifted. Just enough. I stepped back slightly, eyes still locked on the surgical field. Alive. Because of me. The same person he had erased. The same person he tried to prove didn't belong anywhere near a place like this. Closing, I said. My voice sounded different now. Not strained. Certain. As the team began the final steps, I turned toward the side monitor again. Toward the documents. Now fully visible. Signed authorizations. Direct submissions. Institutional contacts. Every altered record, traced back through a chain that led to one name. Victor Voss. Not suspicion anymore. Not theory. Proof. Doctor, the resident said quietly, noticing my focus. Do you know the patient? I didn't look away from the screen. Yes, I said. A beat passed. Then, calm and unmistakable. He's the reason those records exist. Behind me, the monitor gave a sudden, sharp tone. Not flatline. Not yet. But wrong. Doctor, something's not right, the anesthesiologist said quickly. I turned back. The numbers were dropping again. Fast. Too fast. And this time, it wasn't the bleed. Doctor, he's crashing. The shift was immediate. Controlled stability snapped into urgency. I stepped back into position without hesitation. Check the airway, now. Airway's clear, the anesthesiologist replied, already moving. Oxygen saturation dropping. This isn't neurological. I glanced at the monitor, then at the surgical field. The bleed was contained. Clean. Stable. So this wasn't the brain. Run a full panel, I ordered. Blood gas, tox screen, everything. The resident froze for half a second. Tox screen? Do it, I said. Sharper this time. Because something didn't fit. And I'd spent years learning what that felt like. Minutes stretched tight. Numbers dipped, corrected, dipped again. Then the lab results came in. Doctor, the nurse said, her voice uncertain. There's something in his system. I stepped closer. What is it? She turned the screen toward me. A compound. Rare. Not part of any prescribed treatment. My pulse slowed, not from calm, but from clarity. This wasn't spontaneous, I said. The room went quiet. You're saying? The resident started. I'm saying this wasn't just a hemorrhage. He stabilized again after intervention. Barely. Enough to survive. Enough to wake up. 2 days later, I stood outside his hospital room, chart in hand. The door was closed. Guard posted down the hall not for protection, but protocol. VIP patient. Inside, machines hummed steadily. Alive. Because of me. I pushed the door open. Victor Voss looked smaller, weaker. But his eyes when they found mine were exactly the same. Sharp. Assessing. Trying to place me. You, he said, voice rough. You're the surgeon. I stepped inside fully, closed the door behind me. Dr. Voss, I corrected. A pause. Something shifted in his expression. Recognition. Slow. Unwelcome. No, he murmured. That's not. It is, I said evenly. Silence settled between us. You told people I couldn't learn, I continued. You made sure the records supported that. His jaw tightened, not denial. Calculation. You don't understand how things work, he said finally. You weren't. Enough? I finished. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. I placed the folder at the foot of his bed, opened it, document after document, altered scores, missing evaluations, submission logs, all traced, all verified. You signed them, I said, or had them signed. You sent them directly to institutions. You blocked admissions. You rewrote outcomes. His gaze flicked to the pages, then back to me. You would have failed anyway, he said, quieter now. I just made it efficient. The words hung there, flat, certain. like they always had. But now, they had nothing to stand on. "No," I said. "You needed me to." The investigation moved quickly after that. The talk screen raised questions. The documents answered them. Not poison meant to kill, but to weaken, to control timing, optics. A crisis he could survive. A narrative he could manage. But it unraveled. Completely. Boards opened inquiries. Academic institutions reviewed past submissions. Fraud, interference, coercion. Every title he held scrutinized. Then removed. Publicly, it didn't explode. It collapsed. Quietly. Precisely. Just like everything he had built, family called. Some asking questions. Some already choosing sides. My stepmother sent a single message. I didn't know it went that far. I didn't respond. Because whether she knew or not, she stayed. Weeks later, I passed through the same hospital corridor where it had all come full circle. Different day, same pace. "Dr. Voss," a student called, jogging slightly to catch up. "Can I ask you something?" I stopped. "What if—" She hesitated, then pushed through it. "What if someone tells you you're not capable and they have proof?" I looked at her for a moment, then said, "Make sure the proof actually belongs to you." She nodded slowly, like she understood more than she expected to. I continued down the hall, past the OR doors, past the noise, the pressure, the decisions that didn't wait. Everything in my life now was mine. Not assigned, not altered, not decided for me. I didn't go back to his room again. There wasn't anything left to say. Inside OR3, the team was already preparing. "Dr. Voss, we're ready," the nurse said. I stepped into position, gloves on, focus steady. "Let's begin." And this time, there was no one left who could say I didn't belong there.